ability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Mary Ann, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the June 2026 issue of the New York Times Business section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The first article is called Understanding the Pitfalls of Using AI at Work. It's by Noam Scheiber, and it's captioned that scholars study subtle defects that may undermine the technology's benefits. Over the past year or two, companies have started using so-called artificial intelligence agents as bona fide employees, even including them in their organizational charts. Emma Wiles, a Boston University professor who studies how AI affects workers, stumbled onto this phenomenon in October at a conference where two human resources executives said that treating AI agents like real employees was a way to increase productivity and to put their companies on the cutting edge. But when Dr. Wiles and 3 collaborators from Boston Consulting Group investigated further, they discovered a pitfall. In an experiment involving dozens of companies with AI employees, the researchers found that managers tended to vet documents less carefully when told an AI employee had produced them. The managers missed errors that other managers caught when told they were vetting the work of a human. Dr. Wiles speculated that managers didn't think sussing out mistakes made by AI employees was their responsibility. If something went wrong, they could dismiss it as the fault of the tech team or of the executives who wanted AI employees in the first place. But it's not your problem, she said, channeling the manager's mindset about their own roles. In the years since AI burst onto the scene, many companies have become aware of flaws produced by the technology and, at times, taken steps to offset them. They know that AI models can be biased against certain groups of people, like non-whites. They know that chatbots can provide confident but incorrect answers to questions. They know that the bots sometimes spill the beans on information that should remain private. But as companies race to bring AI into their day-to-day operations, researchers are discovering more subtle defects. In principle, these flaws could be corrected too. For example, companies could hold managers directly responsible for the mistakes of AI subordinates. But in practice, most corporate users appear to be blissfully unaware of these issues, raising the possibility that AI's promise of increased productivity and vast cost savings could be undermined. Even researchers who study AI may be aware of only a fraction of the problems that the technology introduces. There are a whole host of unknown unknowns, Dr. Wiles said. One well-documented but underappreciated flaw of artificial intelligence models is that they tend to favor work produced by artificial intelligence. A 2025 paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that several large language models had a low opinion of text written by humans, creating a potentially consequential form of implicit anti-human bias. But many companies seemed unaware of this problem or at least unable to imagine how it might wreak havoc on their operations. When a team of scholars spelled it out in a subsequent paper, finding that the AI models that companies use to evaluate resumes tend to favor those written with the help of AI over those written entirely by humans, it caught the attention of some corporate recruiters. Jane Yi Yang, an operations professor at Ohio State University, who is an author of that subsequent paper, said that she and her co-authors were happy to help when recruiting firms inquired about how to improve their processes. But they noted that this was almost certainly not the only problem companies were inadvertently introducing in their rush to adopt AI. People are moving so fast to use LLMs without thinking too much about the implications. Biases, she said. For example, some companies now use AI to help answer questions like how much to charge for a product or where to open in a new location. Relying on the technology for such purposes, however, can quickly go off the rails. When left to their own devices, humans often cooperate and seek win-win outcomes. But when AI models assess the situation, they tend to adopt the more coldly calculating, rational mindset that arises from basic game theory. They might say, lead a company to aggressively undercut a competitor, even though it risks a damaging price war. There's much more to this article about the pitfalls of using AI at work, and if you would like to know more, please give us a call at 716-821-5555. The next article is entitled Look to Tech for the Best Investments of the Past Century by Jeff Sommer. When you step back and look at the stock market over the past 100 years, what you will find is that a tiny group of publicly traded companies has accounted for nearly all of its profits for investors over the entire century. Most of the top performers are tech companies, headed by Apple, NVIDIA, and Microsoft. What's startling is that both Tesla and, if only briefly, SpaceX, two of Elon Musk's companies, have muscled their way onto that list of superb performers. While these elite stocks churned out spectacular returns, more than 96% of the stock market did virtually nothing for investors over long periods. This vast majority of stocks couldn't even match the 3.3% average return of 1-month Treasury bills. Basically, the return you could get month by month over those 100 years without taking any appreciable risk. These findings come from the latest update to a long-running study by Hendrik Bessembinder, a finance professor at Arizona State University, who has provided a trove of essential and productive data about stock market investing. The study has aimed to ferret out long-term wealth creators since 1926, when the data available to Professor Bessembinder begins. The rise of the tech giants and the relative decline of every other sector of the market has radically changed the rankings over the past decade and over shorter periods as well. For example, Tesla didn't make the list of top wealth creators 9 years ago, when an earlier version of the study ended. The firm now ranks 9th among all publicly traded companies over the century. Even more striking, when Professor Bessembinder ran the numbers at my request on June 16, a few days after SpaceX's initial public offering, the company made the top 30 all-time list, though its falling share price has since moved it out of that rarefied world. We've had very high returns for extraordinarily large firms in recent years, and the first days of SpaceX as a public company were a case study of that, he said. To me, the most striking thing over the last 9 years is that not only is wealth creation highly concentrated in just a few companies, but that the trend has been accelerating. The implications. Back in 2017, I wrote about the first version of Professor Bessenbinder's work on investing. It showed then that the obstacles facing individual stock pickers were formidable. Most company shares failed to outperform basic treasury bills. A small proportion of great performers buoyed the entire market, but knowing in advance which stocks would be the winners was a difficult feat. So I concluded that for a great majority of investors, it was much less risky to avoid stock picking entirely and instead invest with diversified, low-cost mutual funds, particularly index funds, mirroring the entire market. But Professor Bessenbinder's findings also made it clear that there were vast riches to be made for those skilled or lucky enough to make the right choices. If you picked the very best performers and avoided most losers, you would do extraordinarily well. Those two insights remain true today, and perhaps even more so. I still think most people will be better off buying a small part of the entire stock market, a practice that I continue to follow myself. But the potential for gaining enormous wealth tempts millions of investors who scoop up shares of hot individual stocks like SpaceX. You will have to decide what's best for you. Defining terms. In the first study, ExxonMobil was the top performer from 1926 through 2016, followed by Apple, Microsoft, General Electric, IBM, Altria Group, Johnson & Johnson, General Motors, and Walmart. That list depicted a diverse mosaic of the economy, with old companies dominating, aside from two upstarts, Apple and Microsoft, which had IPOs in the 1980s. Now Professor Bessenbinder has 100 years of data, with returns from 1926 through December. Just to put the SpaceX IPO in perspective, he had updated the returns applying the same methods he had used for all publicly traded stocks tracked over the past century. His approach accounts for stock dividends and buyouts, and the comparison with treasury bills includes an inflation adjustment. But Professor Bessenbinder's findings also made it clear that there were vast riches to be made for those skilled or lucky enough to make the right choices. If you picked the very best performers and avoided most losers, you would do extraordinarily well. In the first study, ExxonMobil was the top performer. Just to put the SpaceX IPO in perspective, Professor Bessenbinder has updated the returns, applying the same methods he has used for all publicly traded stocks tracked over the past century. His approach accounts for stock dividends and buyouts, and the comparison with treasury bills includes an inflation adjustment. Lifetime wealth creation, as Professor Bessenbinder defines it, is connected not just to share performance, but also to a company's total market valuation. This means that an increase of 10% in the share price for a giant has far greater effect on total wealth creation than a 10% increase by a company with a small share in the market. That's important because tech companies have become giants, including SpaceX, which has been publicly traded only since June 12th, but has a market capitalization of more than $2 trillion. When tech shares make big moves, 100 years of market returns need realignment. There is more to this article about tech and the best investments for the past century, and if you would like to know more, please call us at 716-821-5555. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times business section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The next article is called When Credibility Turns into a Hard Call by David Siegel. In mid-April, a long and testy argument erupted online over a seemingly trivial question. Did a guy in a video say donk? Donk is Daniel Kriskovitz, a diminutive 19-year-old esports player and a star in Counter-Strike 2, a 5-on-5 shoot-'em-up game beloved by millions. The video was a 7-hour broadcast of a tournament held in Bucharest, Romania, in which Donk did not play. Donk the person in Counter-Strike 2 will soon exit this saga. All you need to know is that during the live stream, it is possible that the name of the famous gamer could have been uttered. And maybe it was. At about the 5-hour, 22-minute mark, one of the game's commentators, known as casters, summed up the predicament of one of the teams called FUT. Let's think about the money situation here for FUT, the caster says. They don't get any kills in this round. When the caster said the first don't, out came something that sounded very similar to donk. Hence the debate, which played out on a Discord page called Dispute Threads. On one side were those who argued that while a donk-like noise had been emitted, it had not been a reference to Donk the player. On the other side were those who said that the context didn't matter, that any donk would do, including this accidental donk, which one debater posted as an audio clip, trimmed and slowed down, then repeated over and over with a bit of echo added. Donk, donk, donk. If you came to this fracas cold, you might have wondered why so many people were so exercised about a matter so minuscule. What, you might have asked, were the stakes? Just over $5.7 million is the answer. Before the tournament began, Polymarket, the online betting platform where wagers are placed on just about anything, posted this bet. Will donk be said during the PGL Bucharest Grand Final 2026? Polymarket and its more buttoned-up rival, Kalshi, have created rollicking marketplaces that sometimes seem designed to settle bar bets. There are contracts on topics as varied as politics, what will Trump say during bilateral events with Xi Jinping, and pop culture minutiae, who will die in Euphoria Season 3, About $2.4 billion was wagered on Polymarket alone in the first week of June. The bettors skew young and male. They come for buzzy, non-stop action, built on platforms with a feature that prediction markets are eager to trumpet, an almost uncanny ability to forecast the future. With thousands of people putting money on the line, the markets are said to harness the wisdom of the crowd and outperform the prognostications of pollsters, economists, and other professionals. It's the most accurate thing we have as mankind right now. Shane Copeland, the 28-year-old founder of Polymarket, said in a 60 Minutes profile. Until someone else creates some sort of a super crystal ball. Polymarket resolves with straightforward bets, like who will win the next Mets game. Its track record is spottier when the answer is ambiguous, like whether someone said donk. Less than 1% of all Polymarket bets land in this disputed category, according to the company, but they tend to be marquee bets, and without a fair system to decide who wins them, the platform's credibility is in jeopardy. You do not know in advance whether your market will be one that ends in a dispute, says Alejandro Lopez Lira, an assistant professor of finance at the University of Florida. So you carry an extra risk that even when you bet correctly, you lose the payoff. Early on, Polymarket relied on an internal team to adjudicate such cases. This trust the bros approach was replaced in 2022. The company can still issue a market clarification and determine a winner. That scenario is rare. Tough calls on the platform have since been decided by something with a soothingly authoritative name, the Optimistic Oracle. The Oracle is an elaborate Web 3.0 contraption that combines cryptocurrency, voting, and game theory in its goal to produce fair judgments. It's billed by its creators, a company based in Manhattan called Risk Labs, as a decentralized truth machine. But for all its brainiac complexity, the Oracle has proved exploitable. Dozens of livid bettors claim the system has been gamed, the handiwork of a budding tech entrepreneur named Lancelot Chardonnay. His name at birth, he says. A look at the donk debate, which unfolded over 9 rancorous days, illustrates how he did it, and the messy, fractious challenges of divining something as nuanced as the truth. The fateful syllable. When the Bucharest video was first broadcast on April 11th, nobody heard donk, and this bet seemed destined to be won by those who bet no. Then someone noticed that the caster, who through sheer phonetic coincidence is known as Dinko, had botched don't. Dinko might have known about the donk bet, so it's at least possible that he said the fateful syllable on purpose. It's even possible he placed money on the outcome. He might have made what linguistics fans would call a voiceless velar stop slip. We don't know. He has not returned emails, and it doesn't matter. Polymarket relies on extensive rules for every bet, and the crucial one for this instance was any usage of the term, regardless of context, will count toward the resolution of this market. With yes voters pointing to the rule and no voters arguing variations of never mind the rule, the donk debate would be settled by Optimistic Oracle. It performs this role for Polymarket's international platform at a rate of about 200,000 bets a month. A vast majority are resolved quickly and without any debate. Will the Dow close up or down today? When the market closes, someone will propose an answer on the Oracle's resolution portal. If no one challenges that answer, it's done. The correct bettors collect their winnings. This is what is optimistic about the Oracle. It assumes most questions are straightforward and people are the same. But when the answers are challenged, the optimism vanishes. It's replaced by greed. Global jury. A few days into the Donk debate on Discord, a 23-year-old Icelandic entrepreneur named Daniel Gardarsson started paying attention. Mr. Gardarsson, a lean, soft-spoken man, runs a natural supplement company near Reykjavik. He began trading on Polymarket in January, wagering mostly on geopolitics. He soon was fascinated by the optimistic Oracle. He had read Plato's Republic when he was 12, and it had left him with an abiding interest in how a society could arrive at fair decisions. The Oracle was attempting that same feat for a worldwide community of anonymous speculators. It took a few weeks for me to figure out how it operated, Mr. Gardarsson said in a phone interview. At the Oracle's foundation is a cryptocurrency called UMA. It's pronounced UMA and stands for Universal Market Access. Anyone can buy UMA and its value goes up and down like all tokens. But UMA owners have a unique power. When a proposed resolution to a bet is challenged, they decide the outcome. Think of them as a jury, usually a few hundred people spread around the globe. They vote by committing their tokens to one side or the other. They also stand to make some money. Anyone who votes with the majority earns a small bonus of UMA. Those who vote with the minority are slashed in the parlance of the Oracle. A small amount of UMA is taken away. The idea is to nudge token holders to vote for the answer that most people would regard as the truth. This is where game theory comes in. With a bet on the color of the sky, for instance, people will tend to say blue, not just because that's true, but because if you had to predict what other people would say, it would make sense to go with blue. That's why Risk Labs calls the Oracle a truth machine. It encourages the consensus answer. It's an auction. Once Mr. Gardarsson got his mind around the intricacies of the Oracle, I thought it was awesome, he said. He bought about 10,000 UMA tokens worth about $4,100. He spent much of the Donk debate at a laboratory in the University of Iceland where he was extracting a chemical from sea moss for his supplement business. While beakers boiled and the smell of algae filled the room, he had time on his hands. He followed the dispute and decided to buy $1,000 worth of yes. It seemed obvious to him that if you listened to the audio and understood the rules, yes would prevail. Many disagreed, and few were more vociferous than someone named Scout. Everyone on Discord uses a pseudonym. The caster did not say donk properly, Scout posted on April 11th. He added a YouTube video demonstrating how to pronounce the word. The Oracle had its first donk vote on April 13th. Nearly 376 voters went for yes. 246 voted no, which might sound like a lopsided victory. But the number of voters does not matter. The amount of UMA tokens by quantity carries the day. No had 60% of the total measured in tokens. That was still not enough to win. One of the consensus-making features of the oracle is that the winning side must get 65% of the value of the voted UMA, so the debate continued. By the time Mr. Garrison posted on Discord on April 15th, he was appalled. Voters who controlled the most UMA, known as whales, were swaying the vote. People who had voted yes in the first round were changing their votes to no for seemingly financial reasons. They didn't want to get slashed. You were listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times business section on the Niagara Frontier Reading Service. The game theory behind the oracle had gone kerflooey. Its finely calibrated levers were producing the preferred answer of the voters with the deepest pockets. On the Discord thread, Mr. Garrison delivered a brief lecture. UMA's entire value proposition, the reason any of your tokens are worth anything, is that the oracle resolves on truth. That's the promise he posted. If whales can scare someone into voting whichever way they prefer, he went on, then what is UMA? It's not an oracle, it's an auction. Whoever holds the most tokens decides reality, and everyone else falls in line out of self-preservation. Mr. Garrison realized that the oracle had a flaw that afflicted more than a few decision-making systems. It could be warped by money. They may see us as a parasite. The oracle was supposed to be whale-proof. It was built by Hart Lambert, a 42-year-old Canadian who graduated from Columbia University in 2005 with a degree in computer science. He worked as a bond trader at Goldman Sachs through the financial crisis of 2008 and later started and sold a business. He was a founder of Risk Labs in 2017. The next year, he published a formidably wonkish white paper explaining UMA. Mr. Lambert declined to comment for this story, but as he explained on Medium, he recognized the need to prevent deep-pocketed UMA holders from simply spending their way to the resolution they favored. Because of the structure of the oracle, buying up a decisive amount of UMA will always cost more than the payoff of any bet. But maybe you don't need to buy the seats to control them. That was the insight of Mr. Chardonnay, the tech entrepreneur who is 32 and lives somewhere in Eastern Europe. He declined to say where or to speak on the phone because he said his English was not strong. He became interested in Polymarket in the months before the U.S. presidential election in 2024, when the platform was hailed for predicting that President Biden would drop out of the race. That August, Mr. Chardonnay, an UMA holder, was on vacation with friends when he came up with a business idea. The UMA system, he realized, required token holders to read a lot. The donk debate alone comprises many thousands of words on Discord. What if a company studied every Polymarket dispute on the Oracle system and advised people on which way to vote? Or better yet, what if that company actually voted on behalf of customers? Because UMA voters receive a small bonus of tokens every time they're in the majority, they surely would give a small fraction of that bonus to a company that takes on the burden of research. This was a no-brainer, Mr. Chardonnay said in an email. I had to build it or someone else would. His company, called UMA Rocks, debuted in September 2024. It doesn't buy UMA tokens. It persuades UMA holders to delegate them for the purpose of voting on the Oracle. More and more have done just that. The startup now controls about 10% of the outstanding UMA. That might not sound like much, but in an otherwise fractured market, it has turned UMA Rocks into the ultimate whale. The company is the largest UMA holder that announces which way it will vote before the tokens are cast. Declaring its intentions is central to the startup's business model. It's the trunk blast of an elephant, a signal to bettors about which side will win. This year, UMA Rocks has been on the winning side more than 99.4% of the time. This one party controls the entire vote, said George Shea, a Polymarket trader and an UMA Rocks critic. It's basically baked into the price. Mr. Lombard hasn't said publicly that he thinks of Mr. Chardonnay, and calls and emails to Risk Labs were returned by a spokesman who declined to comment. A Polymarket representative wrote in an email that nearly all the trades on the platform were uneventfully reconciled. But even so, we remain committed to evolving our processes wherever possible to improve the experience of our users. Mr. Chardonnay said neither company had been in touch with him. Referring to Risk Labs, he said, they may see us as a parasite company and wish we didn't exist. Loss of faith. The Donk debate is a case study in how UMA Rocks can buffalo the Oracle. The voting arm of the startup is a committee of 5 people. During the debate, members, including Mr. Chardonnay and Scout, the very vocal no voter, whichever side he was on, the assumption was that UMA Rocks would eventually join it. Soon, that premonition was changing the debate. Yes voters were certain they had the facts on their side, that Donk had been said, and that the context was irrelevant. But many began to realize that the rules did not matter. On Discord, Mr. Shea watched with growing outrage. A Cornell graduate, he quit his job at a hedge fund in New York City, moved to Columbus, Ohio, and now builds software allowing simultaneous trading on Polymarket and Kalshi. He's a prediction markets true believer, imagining a better future for everyone in the world with improved forecasting. But that won't happen if the mechanism deciding the truth can be gamed. The Donk thing is just one silly bet, but for prediction markets to get to a place where they actually provide societal benefit, people who are using them must have an idea of what the truth might look like, Mr. Shea said. To get to that point, you have to have a resolution that people can trust. But right now, that doesn't exist on Polymarket, and the biggest problem is the UMA system and UMA Rocks. On April 13th, the startup announced it would vote no. In the end, Scout and other no voters won the Donk bet with an 85% victory. Mr. Gardenson soon sold his UMA tokens. I lost faith in the Oracle, he said. A messy system. Polymarket has traveled a long way from the day in 2022 when it was fined $1.4 million by the Commodity Futures Trading Commission for running an illegal betting operation. Today, the company operates under a presidential administration that has embraced prediction markets. Donald Trump Jr. sits on its advisory board. The president's son is also a strategic advisor to Kalshi, which might be the ultimate in bet hedging. Total trading volume on Polymarket for the first quarter of 2026 rose to $26.2 billion, a 90% increase. The platform has fervent fans and some who support the UMA system too. There are currently around 25,000 proposals per day, one recently wrote on Discord. If they switch from UMA to centralized resolutions, I think there's a higher chance of mis-resolutions occurring. But more than a few angry bettors say that the UMA system allows the company to duck the responsibility of refereeing hard calls, and they get some of those wrong. During an onstage interview at Harvard Business School in May, Mr. Kaplan, Polymarket's founder, seemed to acknowledge the problem. He described the company's dispute resolution system as messy, adding that it's run by a third party, but there's improvements coming soon. Whether that means tweaks or something more drastic, he did not say. For its part, UMA Rocks has already announced some changes. Soon after the donk vote ended, Mr. Chardonnay removed himself from the company's voting committee. He did it, he said, because of pressure from Polymarket traders who had threatened both a lawsuit and his life, and to mitigate concerns that he had outside influence over votes. He said he also hoped to shore up belief in the entire process, the Oracle and Polymarket included. This resolution mechanism only works if most people trust that it's working as intended, Mr. Chardonnay said. The last thing we want is people suspecting us of operating some kind of fraud. Scout was also bounced off the committee. Mr. Chardonnay said the step had been necessary to maintain credibility. Scout would not share his thoughts on that or anything about l'affaire Donk for this article. Or he would, but only for a price. I can do a 30-minute interview, he wrote via a Discord message, for $250. The next article is called Luxury Kitchens Where Everything is Hidden. Camouflaging refrigerators and sinks is just the beginning in new high-end designs. It's by Leonora Epstein. This year, the interior designer and influencer Athena Calderon debuted her new home, a Tribeca apartment she had meticulously designed. Previously, Ms. Calderon lived in a Brooklyn brownstone, and her kitchen, with its marble countertops and navy shaker cabinets, became a blueprint for fellow designers and renovators. So when she revealed her latest kitchen, it came as a shock. It was less a kitchen and more of a room, featuring a central, unadorned island with the cooking range contained in a recessed niche that could be hidden behind folding opaque glass doors. Ms. Calderon said that her design blurs the lines between what is a kitchen and what is just a beautiful space for entertaining. In the country's wealthiest enclaves, like New York City and Miami, concealment has become the defining aspect of the contemporary kitchen. What began with appliance garages and refrigerators and dishwashers that look like cabinets has evolved into a far more ambitious practice of disguise, with custom millwork and technology obscuring everything from sinks and cooktops to electrical outlets and small appliances. Sharon Dranko, the former chief executive of Isla Porter Cabinetry and a consultant for kitchen brands including Nobilia, said the rise of open-plan living has helped fuel the trend. Kitchens are more open and visible than they used to be, she said, so people want all the capability without every appliance becoming part of the aesthetic. The result is often a space that feels largely neutral, a minimalist design of stone paired with frameless cabinetry that even eschews visible door hardware in favor of push-to-open mechanisms. Nero Cucine, a New York-based company founded in 2015 that manufactures in Italy, has built its business around culinary concealment. Its hyper kitchens pair minimalist forms with elaborate engineering. Its most popular offering is a marble island with a mechanized sliding countertop that glides open to reveal a sink and induction cooktop. Other pieces include cabinetry with retractable panels that completely obscure shelving, storage, or appliances. It's not just about hiding the kitchen and making it look like furniture, said Bartolomeo Bellati, Nero Cucine's co-founder and president. We're taking it a step further, making it look sculptural, almost like a monolith within the space, so it becomes a piece of art. The company's latest concept, the NU, developed in collaboration with the New York architecture and design firm Gabellini Shepherd, pushes concealment into a Kubrickian realm. The kitchen consists of two parts. The island portion features a sink and cooktop hidden by a retractable winged countertop that lifts and disappears into its body. The piece also incorporates AI controlled lighting and voice activation. The refrigerator, oven, and dishwasher are housed in a separate component, a massive box coated in metallic black lacquer. The effect may be slightly terrifying, but there's a market for it. The firm's architect and interior designer, Michael Gabellini, attributes the growing demand for these features to clients' desires for highly custom and high-performance homes, comparing many of his commissions to couture fashion. He added that luxury hospitality has become an important influence on residential design. Clients encounter this kind of design in five-star hotels, he said, and want something similar with similar levels of functionality in their homes. Of course, this level of design comes with added costs, which can reach hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of dollars. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times business section on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. Even seemingly simpler concealments add up quickly, said Ms. Dranko, referring to modifications like hidden paper towel holders, knife storages built into drawers, integrated trash and recycling, and charging drawers. Storage inserts can easily drive 30% of the cost of a custom kitchen, she said. The irony, some designers say, is that the people commissioning these complicated kitchens may rarely cook in them. A lot of my clients make me do incredible kitchens that they never use, lamented Stefano Veniere, the other co-founder and design director of Nero Cucine. He noted that many of these highly streamlined designs end up in second or third homes, getting used for mere weeks out of a year. In some cases, the kitchen's primary purpose is purely presentational. Mr. Gabellini said some of his clients build multiple kitchens on a single site, adding catering prep spaces that handle much of the actual cooking. The main kitchen becomes a show kitchen. But not every designer embracing concealment is interested in turning the kitchen into a ultra-modern showboat. Ms. Calderon, an avid cook, crafted her Tribeca kitchen for use. The folding doors are always open for the most part, she said, and while she appreciates the ability to hide away certain elements, she is skeptical of the hyper-minimalist aesthetic that often accompanies such features. It feels too modern, it feels too try-hard, she said. I think I have an aversion to things that just feel too slick, too tricked out. Instead, designers of Ms. Calderon's mindset are increasingly incorporating concealment into kitchens in a way that feel more layered, decorative, and even playful. The Los Angeles-based designer Jake Arnold recently finished a Beverly Hills guest house kitchen contained behind decorative mirrored paneling, complete with gas burners installed directly into a marble countertop. Yasmin Gonium, director of the Australia-based YSG studio, says her clients are asking to conceal kitchen sinks especially if they regularly entertain. In one project, she created a partly hidden scullery behind the main kitchen. In the same space, Miss Ganium also disguised a refrigerator by repeating the wheat-colored micromint used on the walls and adding custom chrome and leather handles to mirror the rest of the kitchen's design. Plain English, a British cabinetry outfit with showrooms in New York and Los Angeles, offers a larder fridge integration which reads more like an antique hutch than an appliance container. The question is whether these concealments will trickle down into mainstream kitchen design. At the very least, there's an appetite for appliances that don't look like appliances. Take the popularity of the Rocco, a beverage fridge that looks more like a freestanding cabinet, which has sold out multiple times. And in 2024, the architect and product designer Patricia Urquiola teamed up with Signature Kitchen Suite to design a series of refrigerators clad in concrete tiles, transforming them into sculptural furnishings. As for the more high-tech integrations, Miele, the German appliance maker, formed a partnership with Hettich, the furniture fittings manufacturer, to present a concept in response to limited living space at this year's Milan Design Week. The setup featured a multifunctional unit with rotating appliances that disappear from view and a cooktop integrated directly into the countertop surface. While the exhibition focused on solutions for apartment dwellers of middle-class means, the design is aspirational with no current plans for use. For now, the fully concealed kitchen remains in the territory of the wealthy. Yet, it raises a question about the future of kitchen design. One day, will our kitchens stop looking like, well, kitchens? And the article has many pictures, photographs really, of these various appliances that look like just cabinets or that are built into countertops to view, very modernistic looking. The next article states that 6.1% decline in U.S. gasoline consumption in May from a year earlier. Many Americans drove less and bought more fuel-efficient vehicles in response to higher gasoline prices during the war with Iran, and those habits may not recover after the conflict, Lydia Del Pillis reported in the New York Times. U.S. gasoline consumption in May was down 6.1% from a year earlier, according to Dow Jones Energy. Even though many Americans are car dependent, studies show that gasoline prices affect consumption. Denton Cinquegrana, Dow Jones Energy's chief oil analyst, told Ms. DePillis that half the drop was probably due to the increasing efficiency of passenger vehicles, but that the other half could be attributed to consumers' response to soaring prices. In the war's early months, Americans seemed willing to absorb higher prices. Spending at gas stations jumped 21% from February to May. But later, many drivers changed their ways. Some people are working remotely instead of driving to work, and hybrid car sales have been popular since the start of the war, according to Cox Automotive. People who need to buy a car, they're looking online at these options that are more fuel efficient. Stephanie Valdez-Streety, Director of Industry Insights at Cox, told Ms. DePillis. In the past, high prices had a lasting impact on demand. After the 1970s oil embargo, gas consumption per person in the United States fell, and demand didn't recover for 2 decades. Some who have changed their routines, including by taking public transit, are finding that they don't want to go back to their old ways. Once it becomes a habit, it's not an onerous thing, it's built into the pattern of my behavior, Judy Vassallo, a retired art teacher in Philadelphia, told Ms. DePillis about taking a city bus downtown. You're going into the city, you're going to take the bus, and I'm finding that it's so much easier. This article was by Laura Kelly. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the June 28, 2026 issue of the New York Times Business section. We read from the New York Times Business section every Thursday at 11 a.m. Your reader has been Mary Ann. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the USA Today. At 2 o'clock, we have episode number 1 of We the Women by Nora O'Donnell. Stay with us.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low